Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Luke Marek Show. I'm Luke Marek. We bring in somebody to sit next to me here every day that we have one of these, and just to bring in a little bit of their own testimony mixed with mine, a little bit of our walk and our Christian faith. Maybe it's not always about our faith. Maybe it's just about everyday life. But it's a little bit of how we can reach out to everybody else to encourage them in their own life. But ultimately, bring it to God, because without Him, we're nothing. So really, that's what it's all about. So today I have a good friend and pastor of our church. This is Brian Cross, and he's pastor of our local church here. And we're going to sit down and have a little bit of a conversation just to show just being everyday normal people. His name is Brian Cross, but pastor is his title. So we're going to get a little bit more in depth about that and see where that all fits into everyday life and being a big minister to a big family in our church here. So, Brian, just a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me, Luke. Excited to be here. So, like you said, my name is Brian. I'm born and raised in New Jersey, Blairstown, New Jersey. Very similar area to Dallas or like Lehman area where we're at now. And so grew up there. I grew up in a home that I would say feared God, didn't really know God. My mom had gotten saved when she was young. At a Billy Graham crusade, giant stadium.
Awesome.
Her youth leader at her church brought her there as a teenager, and that's where she accepted Christ. My dad was raised Catholic, always knew about God, feared God, revered God, but didn't really understand that the Lord wants a relationship with us through His Son Jesus. So I grew up going to a church that would do VBS and eventually youth group and all of those things. And I came to know the Lord when I was in 8th grade on a retreat up at Camp Orchard Hill.
Okay.
So I know you've had Jim on the show before, so I go way back with Camp Orchard Hill, and that's when I put my faith and trust in the Lord. I realized I was living a faith like basically through my parents and not really my own.
Mm-hmm.
And God was calling me to have my own faith and to put my faith and trust in Him.
Awesome. So eighth grade or 8 years old?
8th grade. Sorry. Did
Okay.
I say 8 years old?
No, I'm just trying to just piecing it together.
Yeah. So 8th grade, I had heard the gospel at VBS and different things, and I always knew I didn't want to go to hell. I wanted my sins to be forgiven, but I didn't really, I think, truly understand that decision until I was in 8th grade and gave my life to Jesus and really started changing the way I lived and following Him and being obedient to what His Word says. Doesn't mean I was perfect. I'm not perfect to this day. None of us are, right? But I try to follow Him as best I can, through what His Word says and through His strength.
Okay. So 8th grade.
Yeah.
And you said, obviously nobody's perfect. So where'd you go from 8th grade? High school? Did you go to a private school, a Catholic school, or anything like that? Or was it all public? Or?
I went public school every part of my life except for college.
Okay.
So I was at a public high school. Loved playing sports. I grew up playing basketball, baseball, basketball. My mom wouldn't let me play football, even though I'm a big guy. I ended up playing lacrosse as well, and I played that all the way through high school. And like I said, I wasn't perfect. We had a Fellowship of Christian Athletes group at my high school that I attended and then eventually would lead. But, I loved sports and I was very competitive, and to the point of it became an idol in my life at one point.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Did you ever step away and put something before God?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sports, I would say by this point, my dad came to know who Jesus was in 9th grade. He got saved when I was a freshman. And we as a family, we were committed to going to church. I was at youth group. I was not allowed to be a part of any travel teams that took place on Sundays. Like, my parents had those healthy boundaries. What I would say is healthy boundaries, even though at the time I was like, this is such a drag. Like, all my other friends are on these teams and I can't play. Why? Because it's Sunday and I have youth group or I have church, whatever it was. But I'm so thankful for it now. Because I was not going to be a professional lacrosse player. I was putting sports ahead of the Lord. In fact, when I was a freshman, I actually earned a starting spot on the team, and I became very arrogant and very big-headed about it. And I'm not saying God caused it, but I think I was allowed to get hurt, and I really messed my knee up halfway through the season. And sports was taken away from me for that period of time. I would recover and be able to play eventually again, but it really made me pause and kind of reset my focus.
A little humble.
Yeah. Oh, big piece of humble pie.
Yeah. Took that idol away from you real quick.
Oh, yeah, because it could be taken from us like that.
Yeah.
And so I was reminded about who I play for and why I play, and I would then from that point use, again, not perfect, but would use my position on the team, as I would get older, eventually be the captain of the team. When I was a senior, I used that position to be able to share my testimony, share the Lord with others, and try to talk with my teammates. And of course you have a lot of guys that don't want to hear it, public school, but you had some that would listen.
They're receptive.
And would ask questions, and even some of my coaches, just talking with them and having conversations with them, but they had to be careful as well because of, just there's so much red tape in schools. If I would bring something up as a student, they could engage the conversation.
But they couldn't lead it.
But they can't lead it or direct it. But I know that God definitely used that in my life. Actually, my senior year, we played a school, and one of my teammates laid a hit on one of the other players on the other team, and he fell down like a sack of potatoes and was not moving. Had to get an ambulance, came in, had to get him rushed to the hospital. This other kid, my friend, felt so bad for doing that. It wasn't a dirty hit. It was a clean play. It was a contact sport. I remember using that time as we were all kind of standing there on the sidelines thinking what happened. I asked my coach, can I address the team? And I didn't necessarily share the gospel at that moment, but I just said, guys, this game is a gift, and it can be taken from any of us like that. And we need to be praying for him and that he can recover. And really just even from that, some other conversations I was able to have with teammates followed up with that.
That's awesome.
And just seeds, I think, that were planted. It wasn't like the whole team came to Christ or anything, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a huge,
it wasn't like a movie or a scene from a movie or anything, but it was. I truly think that it was the Lord and the Holy Spirit telling me, like, you need to say something. You need to address the guys because we all just saw this happen.
Yeah.
And it's a very serious thing. So, yeah.
You ever hear of just escaped my name? Brian Koch was a catcher for the. I may be wrong. I'm going to say Reds. I could be wrong, but he was a catcher, and I went to a men's retreat where he spoke.
Okay.
And baseball was his life. Mm-hmm. And they pulled a dirty play. He called for an inside fastball as the catcher, and the batter got beamed. Well, next thing, he was up to bat, and they beamed him. They hit him in the face. Took out his right eye.
Oh, my goodness.
Baseball was finished.
Yeah.
He had an accident with his wife on a motorcycle, and I can't remember if he lost his wedding ring on his left side. Had an accident with his left leg, had all these things.
Wow.
And everything was on it wasn't his right eye, it was the left eye. So everything was on his left side, and he said, I'm all right.
Wow.
Jokingly.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book, and it was all about coming to Christ and keeping that faith, but realizing that baseball was everything, baseball wasn't everything.
Right.
And I remember that was like he was a big speaker at the conference that Jim Bevere was there, a couple of other guys.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, there was, or John Bevere, I think it was.
Yeah.
But a lot of different guys that were at this retreat. But that one stuck with me because, again, it was a sports thing where you see guys now that are on TV.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see a lot of Christians. There's not a lot of Tim Tebows, but there are a lot more coming to light. Mm-hmm. You see a lot more people taking a knee for the right reason.
Oh, yeah.
And jumping into the limelight and showing that.
Absolutely.
I don't know where Cristiano Ronaldo for soccer stands.
Right, yeah.
But he's a good guy.
Yeah.
And he seems like he's very honorable.
Okay.
And talking about growing up, I grew up in a Catholic family. My mother always used to say, I'm not a good Catholic, but I'm a darn good Christian. Yeah. And I'd be like, no, I don't know. You kind of slipped up just right there. But we all do. But she would, make that joke, but it was serious. She knew, and I always say, my mother is she's Catholic. She'll be Catholic. She's never going to change. Maybe she will one day, but she believes in God. She believes in Jesus. She believes in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with, my walk in Christianity and, our church, and think when I look at my mother, that woman's not going to hell. Mm-hmm. Right. She's a good person, she does, and not by works, right? Just in her heart, in what she does, how she raised us. I'm the youngest of 6.
Okay.
We all went, to Catholic school. My parents sacrificed. We were altar boys. That's the way we were raised. So again, fear of God, knew all that, but never a relationship. We never even had a Bible in our house.
Mm. Well, it wasn't for them to read, right? That was the priest.
Yeah, exactly. The priest would read, and then he would give you a synopsis of what he just read, and we would all sit there, like good little boys, and we're 5 boys and 1 girl in our family, just like this. As my mother would give you a look, if you did anything wrong, and then That was it.
Yeah.
But we never practiced anything out of there. Sacraments, a
Okay,
sacrament would come along. Everybody'd have to dress up and you'd go, and then there were funerals.
A lot of tradition.
Yeah, exactly. No relationship. No relationship. So it was annoying.
Right.
Is what it really became to be. And I know I stepped away from the faith as soon as I could. As soon as I had my license, and I didn't have to be driven to church, when I'm the youngest by 10 years. So my oldest brother's 10 years older than I am. When we used to go to church, and when he started to drive, they used to have bulletins in Catholic. So somebody pull up in front, one of us would run out, grab a bulletin, and then we'd all go to breakfast or to a park or something for the morning. And Mom would say, "We were there. Well, because we got the Cliff Notes." So we'd go home and go, we know what happened, because it said who the priest was that said service, who they prayed for. We had all the Cliff Notes. So it's like, how was Mass? Oh, Mass was great. Father, so and so, we knew it all, But come to learn that my parents knew so many people. They knew we weren't in church. They knew what was going on. But it was, we were kids, and that's not a write-off. And like you said, in 8th grade, you knew. I knew when I was younger too what God was. I knew the commandments. I knew these things. I knew the right way to go about things. And throughout my life, those things kind of like jumped in every once in a while, as I wasn't going to church, as I wasn't continuing a walk with God. And I was good. Things were good, but there was always something missing. But I've had accidents in my life where I shouldn't have been here. I've had situations where I have had accidents while drinking. I had a DUI, back in the 90s, which is when you were born, I think, but
1990, yeah.
So, I had some issues, and I look at things like that. And I had an accident, and I don't even remember the accident, but I know that I was drinking in the accident. And when I went the next day to get my car, there was a fence post that had impaled the headrest in the driver's seat where I was. And I couldn't believe it, because I stand here today, and I left that accident with not a scrape on me.
Wow.
So I look back at things like that and go,
the Lord wasn't done with you yet.
What am I? And I still think I ask myself that, what am I here for? And part of having this conversation with people, I feel is part of it. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this what I'm supposed to be at? To tell people that stop messing up and get back on track. Listen, we still have problems. We still have, I'm not, I shouldn't say, we're not perfect by any means. I still mess up. I try not to. Try not to repeat the same mess up. I guess, I guess is the issue.
So. I was just listening to a podcast, well, not a podcast, but a sermon by a pastor, Joby Martin, Church of 1122 down in Jacksonville, Florida. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
It's really good, really solid. He quoted John MacArthur, and I hope I don't butcher the quote, but John MacArthur passed away recently, giant of the faith that we lost this year. And he said, like, 2 things will happen as you get into God's word more. Your faith will grow, right? And you'll sin less, but how did he say it? You'll sin less, but you'll feel worse. Meaning, like, we're not going to stop sinning until we're in glory. Like, we're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. But as you're following the Lord, okay, the closer you get to him, like, the fewer times you'll slip up. Doesn't mean you're going to stop sinning. But even, like, when you do, like, you'll feel that remorse. You're convicted. Yeah. Like the pastor that was sharing in the interview, he goes, his story was like, look, if when I came to Christ, if I wasn't sleeping around with someone or having a hangover or this or that, I thought I was qualifying for sainthood that day, because that was like right after he came to Christ, but now he's like, if I even just think about something in a way that we're not supposed to think about, right? Like the Lord says, you've heard it said, thou shalt not murder, but I tell you, if you have even hate in your heart towards your brother, you've committed murder. Yeah. So he's like that. Like that's the sensitivity that we get to, that as the more mature we become in Christ. So yeah, we're never gonna be perfect, until we're glorified in glory with the Lord in heaven. But it's gonna be, we have to understand, like, to be realistic. And again, it's not a license to sin or an excuse or a crutch or anything, but it's just like, hey, like we're going to do the best we can, but we need the Lord, of course, like it's following him and his word.
I saw a meme once with a kid on a bike, and it said, I prayed for a bike, but I knew God doesn't work that way, so I stole it and asked for forgiveness. He doesn't work that way.
Right,
When you knowingly commit the sin.
Yeah.
That's
It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
I just said that to one of the boys the other day. I think it was about him beating his brother. I said, he asked his mother for permission, and I was like, don't ask for permission. Just beat him up and then just be like, sorry.
Yeah.
So, there you go. It's the joy of having 4 boys, teenagers,
I'm sure.
So they all love each other so much.
And they express it in different ways.
All different ways. So you go, let's see. So you had the issue during lacrosse.
Yeah.
Kind of brought some people to. So that's high school.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you went to, would be considered seminary for college? Or?
It was Bible college.
Okay.
So back up a little bit from that. So I had been going to Camp Orchard Hill every summer since I was in 3rd grade. And Camp Orchard Hill is an awesome ministry. And again, right here locally. And our church supported them, and we would always. So
this is when you were in Jersey, or were you?
This is when I was in Jersey.
So you traveled from Jersey to come here.
Yeah. So so my parents would take me to summer camp in the summers, because it was before they had day camp. It was like just sleepaway camp. Like I was in 3rd grade going to a sleepaway camp. Now, like a lot of parents don't let their high schoolers out of house. It's just a different world, right? And so I went there from that point on all the way up, and it was my summer after my junior year. I was going into my senior year of high school, and I remember my parents, they sacrificed a lot for me with sports and everything else. And so my mom, I think, had come to me that year and said, hey, we could either afford to send you to Camp Orchard Hill, or you can go to this lacrosse camp that you've been wanting to go to. Well, at that point, even though I had gone through my experience with getting hurt and everything, but I was back, I was healthy, I felt like I was still honoring the Lord. I did want to try to play lacrosse in college. So I said, well, let me go to this camp. I want to go to this camp, and so I can get better, so that I can maybe look better for scouts, whatever my thought process was at that time. So I was going to forgo Camp Orchard Hill. Well, so I went to the camp. That was fine and everything, and then I was home for the summer and just hanging out, doing what teenagers do, staying up late, playing Call of Duty or Halo, whatever. I was drinking way too much Mountain Dew. And I remember it came the week that I was supposed to be at Camp Orchard Hill. And camp starts on a Sunday, and it was like camp starts on a Sunday, but my mom had called the camp the previous week. Is like, hey, Brian changed his mind, and he really wants to come to camp. If there's any way that he could get there, we could only afford X amount, whatever it is, right? Well, Sunday came, and we were already supposed to be up there. Well, Jim Payne calls my parents and says, hey, we have a kid that just backed out of a spot. It's a fully paid spot. If Brian wants to get to camp, he's just got to get here. So do laundry, get everything together. My mom throws me in my mom just doesn't throw me in the car. I was bigger than my mom, but like we get in the car, we come up, I go to camp. And in my mind, I had already had my senior year planned out, already potentially knew where I wanted to go to school. I was going to play lacrosse for this school and everything. I had a counselor that week, and the school he was going to was called Philadelphia Biblical University. And I had told him my plan. Oh, I have it all planned out. This, and he goes, oh, okay. He goes, you should come visit me. Like and like they do like stay overnight things, like
an open house type.
Like an open house. They called it SOAR days. And so you should come and hang out and see the campus. Get a real, like they'll show you everything like during like open house, but then you'll get like the real experience of what the campus is like after that programming's all done, and you're here for like a weekend with me. And I'm like, okay. And I just got really close with this. He was a great guy. Still talk to him to this day. His name's Brandon. And I go and visit him in October. And I got out of the car, and as soon as my feet hit the pavement, I just had this overwhelming peace and I didn't know how to say it to my parents other than, this is where I'm going to go to school. Don't know why, but just felt, I believe it was the Holy Spirit, just, this is where you're going to be.
Now we just got to figure out if they've got a lacrosse team.
And they don't. No lacrosse team. So, which I had come to peace with. And at that point, growing up, I had always knew I wanted to teach. I wasn't sure if that was going to be a school teacher, like whether I loved history, could teach history, different things like that. But I then, as I grew in my faith, my youth pastor, who works for Camp Orchard Hill now, by the way, he saw something in me, and I had started to get the sense that I wanted to work with students. Don't know in what capacity. I knew I needed to be telling others about Jesus and wanted to share him with as many people as I could. And I started helping with our younger youth group. We had a junior high youth group and a senior high youth group. We had them separated. but when you were an older student, you could help with the younger. So I started doing that, really enjoyed that, really just, you ever do something and you're like, this is my purpose. Like, I'm functioning in what God has created me to do. That was kind of the piece that I was starting to feel there. So going back to being at college, at that campus, at that point, I already felt the call in my life to be a pastor, youth pastor.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Where did the change of being teacher to pastor?
So I knew I wanted to go and study youth ministry and serve students and families and parents, and that's why I just felt that sense, that call from God was so clear to me, and just was confirmed over and over in my life by other people that were in my path, by Jim Payne, by my youth pastor, by others that had known me. And so I get out of the car. Again, I have that sense of overwhelming sense of peace that this is where I need to be. They had chapel that day. Who's speaking in chapel? The head of the youth ministry department. And his name is Dr. Mikulak, but he makes us call him Matt. And Matt is, I would say Matt is the closest person that I've met that truly, like, is so just like Jesus. Embodies the Lord and Jesus and his love for others, his love for children, for students, for families, for people. So gentle yet bold, servant. He's a servant's heart. He's got like 5 or 6 degrees, right? You never know, not because he acts in a unbecoming manner, but because he's so humble.
Yeah.
He's not like above you in any way. He cares about
that shows a lot, because if he's got a title, if he's earned a degree title of doctorate, but he doesn't want to be called, you can tell a lot, I think, about people like that, even doctors. If you're Brian, how are it's Dr. Brian. Okay, we're done talking.
It still feels weird, like Pastor Brian, like my youth pastor Steve growing up, my parents were always like, you call him Pastor Steve, and he'd be always, you call me Steve.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Growing up, when I was growing up, I mean, it was Mr., Mrs., like Mr. Cross. You'd be like,
that's my dad,
Brian, or whatever.
That's my dad.
My parents would be like, don't you dare call him that, And they'd be like, no, really, it's okay. And I'd be like, dude, I am not calling you by your name. Like, my parents, I have my rear, I'll be picking the switch out tonight. One that breaks.
And so I'm there, and Matt is speaking in chapel, and like, I just in that moment, it just felt God was bringing everything together. I had a great weekend there. Again, going back, no lacrosse team. This other school that I was looking at going to, they had a lacrosse team. I'd already talked to the coach. It was a Christian university. I was going to go still. I could still study youth ministry and go there, but I didn't have that peace there. And I'd been to that campus. I'd been there. It just wasn't sitting right with me. And I figured, it would just work out in time.
Yeah.
But when I went to this other place, and now it was Philadelphia Biblical University. Now it's called Cairn University. And is still...
You should probably think about changing that name.
Yeah, right? It's not spelled like the woman's name, Karen. It's Cairn.
I know, you've mentioned that in church before, and I hear it, and I'm like, they should probably rethink that.
Yeah. It's we had it before it was a negative connotation.
The college that's up the road is it's a university, is Misericordia University.
Yeah.
And everybody used to call it Misery. They spent tons and tons trying to get people to not call it Misery anymore. Yeah. My aunt is she's passed now, but she was an alumni there. My sister's an alumni there, and it was always known as Misery. But it's like, let's not call it that. It's very catchy, So maybe Karen. I know they're caring, but Karen should be.
Or I've heard Ms. Or whatever it is.
But it's funny that you say. It seems that your story. It seems like you kept going to lacrosse, even like you said, I'll go to this Christian academy, but they've got a lacrosse thing. So it's almost like God had to remove that lacrosse, because it was part of you that you may have moved God here, but it almost seems like you were doing this the whole time.
Yeah.
Even though you were like, I'm going to go to the Christian university because I'm thinking teaching, but they have lacrosse too.
Yeah.
So every time, like, depending on what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
So totally removing that, then really.
Yeah. And having a piece about it, of realizing at the end of the day, and it's funny because then I would be there for 4 years, and I did an internship under a youth pastor there. And I remember just talking with him. He has 7 kids, and just talking with him. He goes, look, I love sports. He goes, but I, as a dad, will not let sports get in the way of me discipling my kids. He goes, I'll let them play baseball, let them play soccer, whatever sport they want to play. Yeah. He goes, But if it's going to put them in a situation, just like kind of like my parents, it's going to put them in a situation where they have to choose the sport over church or sport over God. He goes, I don't even want that to be a distraction for them. So, and he just always broke it down simply of, are we focused on the temporal or the eternal? He goes, because there's one thing that will have lasting impact. Like, not that sports can't. Sports teach a lot of great things. Yeah. I'm pro sports. I'm not against them, but like I think just like anything good, it can become an idol very quick. Yep. And we have to be cautious of those things. And that's where it's, and again, too much of anything, right? What was it growing up? Everything in moderation. Yeah. You know, like
just the problem is being moderate.
Right. And not a lot of people know moderation. Yeah. You know, and so we go so like headlong into things, get passionate about it, and we don't stop to check it. Okay, am I starting to put this above the Lord? Yeah. You know? So
I think before I was saved, as I mentioned, I had I still say it now. I'm an alcoholic, so it doesn't change.
Yeah,
it's one thing that I have to not make sure that I don't go to. You know, but it becomes a very I say mentally. Mentally, I guess, is part of our physical. But mentally, when I can't deal with something, that's like my go-to.
Right.
If I want to, like some people would take a drug, or maybe some people take a Tylenol for a headache or something like that. It's something to calm whatever nerves. So, but all it does is it causes more problems. Mm-hmm. Now, there might be people that can have a drink in moderation.
Right.
But then there's people that, I have a friend who's an alcoholic. He's, I don't remember how many days sober now, but he's he's probably close to 1,000 days sober. He's several years.
Awesome.
And we had tried we actually had him stay with us I came home one day and told Gail, I said, hey, Pat's going to live with us. She's like, okay. And I was like, yeah, he's having a really hard time, you know, like with his family, and he's drinking. And Pat is a large gentleman. He's probably bigger than you.
Okay.
How tall are you? 6'3". 6'3". He's got to be at least 6'6".
Okay.
And I mean, he's got to turn sideways to go in the door. He's broad-shouldered. Yeah. He's a corrections officer. He is a big man.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. And Gail's, you know, not 6'6". And so she's like, okay, he's going to stay here, huh? And I said, yeah, we're just going to try to help him out, you know, and so on and so forth. And I told him, I said, you can stay here as long as you want. I said, I'm going to tell you one thing. I said, you're not going to lie to me. I said, so as long as you don't lie to me, I said, I will help you. We'll give whatever we can. You know, we'll try to help you. Yeah. And one day I had to come to find out that he lied, and I questioned him about it, and he put his head down just like a dog, and he's like, I'm supposed to leave, right? I go, yeah. I said, I gave you everything. I said, I will always be here for you.
Yeah.
I said, you can come to me anytime you want. I said, but not once you broke my trust with that. I said, this was a safe place for you to come, you know, to get away from everybody that was hard on you. I was going to help you get back on your feet, so on and so forth. And he left, and I didn't talk to him for a while. I ran into him at a store one day, and he looked totally different. Wow. He had just come back from a 30-day sobriety.
Awesome.
And I was like, dude, that is so great, you know? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, he goes, one of the things I learned, he goes, that one's not enough and 80's too many. And I'm like, there you go. Yeah, true. Yeah, true. You know? As a matter of fact, one of the kids came the other day, and he said, you know who Andre the Giant is, right?
Yeah.
Andre the Giant drank. He was an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
And it was for pain. Yeah. He drank for pain.
Yeah, his back.
I can't, just because he was so huge, his body was just crushing himself.
Yeah.
But I can't remember. Evan said his like, I think he had like over 100 beers one day.
Oh my!
And it's like, well, first off, I mean, he was a tank to begin with, but still, that many drinks.
Yeah.
And people get into those situations. People get drug addicted because of pain.
Right.
And you look for something else. Mm-hmm. If we took care of our health, or we took care of situations, and we looked at things in a different way. But not everybody's that easy. You know, it's hard. Moderation's hard. Moderation's hard for chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Ice cream.
Absolutely.
You know? So Mountain Dew, whatever it is, you know? Yeah. So
Diet Coke.
Yeah. There's things that have to be done in moderation that people have to. I remember listening to a pastor once, and it was actually a pastor of an old church that I went to, and he said, don't ever put up, like, you know, Facebook was, you know, look what we did, where we're at. And somebody put up, somebody on the worship team had put up a picture of them at a casino in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And he's like, take that down. And they're like, why? It was somebody's birthday party. And he's like, just take it down. And they're like, but we weren't drinking and we weren't gambling. And he's like, that's not what the picture says.
Right.
Even though there's no drinks in front of you, they can tell in the background where you are.
Yeah.
There's a person that has a gambling issue. Everyone has a vice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You know, like we said, everything, you know, some things can be good, some things not. Everybody has a vice, and you can't trump somebody else's vice. Right. So he's like, take it down. We have people that come to church that have gambling problems. We have people that have drinking issues. You know, they come here because we're supposed to build them up. Now, if you're on stage and they look to you as one of those people to build you up, and then
they see
you, they're like, well, why can't I do that?
Mhm.
Well, unfortunately, because you have a problem. You
Right.
know, now it doesn't make it okay,
Yeah.
but it's almost helping that person to make it better in their life.
Yeah.
Because then they say, well, see, it's not bad. You know, the pastor has a drink, or you know, the worship
Right.
team has it. I can do it,
Right.
but you can't, because maybe that's your vice.
Right.
You know, and there are people out there that do it, and that's not a knock on anyone.
No.
But if somebody needs help,
Mhm.
you need to admit the help, and you need to get the help.
Right.
You know, you need to find that help.
Yeah, God gives us liberty in so many different ways, but yet we also have scriptures that tell us to be mindful of the weaker brother.
And give you enough rope to hang yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah, and but it's we all have those things. And
it's funny. Oh, sorry, just real quick. You mentioned about the younger brother, and one thing I just heard the other day talked about the prodigal son.
Yeah,
and it was talking about the prodigal son coming back, and the father ran out to him. The kid just came out of a pigsty. There's a Jewish father hugging his son. No worries about his cleanliness, nothing. And they're like, thank goodness the father came before the other brother.
Oh,
because the other brother would have been, you stink like alcohol. Look at you. You came back here after you stole everything. The father's love is what hit him first.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back, still not perfect,
right,
but knew where he sinned and knew what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So just like Jesus, that's the whole story. You know, the prodigal son is Jesus, you know, accepting you back
Mm-hmm.
with your faults.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's going to be a challenge, but if he would have met the brother out in that field, he maybe not have continued his walk.
Right.
You know, so meeting the father, and that's the person that really matters,
no,
you know,
absolutely.
to come back. So sorry to cut you off, but hopefully you thought
you're fine. No, so I went to I just continuing on, like, you know, I went to PBU for 4 years, you know, graduated with a degree in Bible and youth ministry, and then I remember it was my senior year there, and it was about February, and I was wrestling with the Lord, wrestling of, okay, what's next? Like, you led me here, but and I know you're calling me into the ministry, but where are you calling me to? So, believe it or not, there's almost like classifieds or whatever for pastors. It's a website, churchstaffing.org, and I had signed up for just different notifications of jobs, you know, as they would come up, and I'd get a daily email. It'd come through at like 4 a.m. But I wasn't checking it until later. So I'm in the middle of my Romans class, not paying attention, and because I'm wrestling with, okay, what's next? Where am I going to go, Lord? And I applied to churches all over. I had applied to a church in New Hampshire. There was one in Florida and Texas I was looking at. But one morning, I didn't hear anything. Nothing. Heard nothing. Well, the New Hampshire one, yes, but it was going to be, we can't pay you. You're going to have to be like a barista at like a Starbucks or something, and we'll maybe pay for your gas. It wasn't going to be a good situation, right? And again, not that any situation is perfect, but I remember looking through, and I'm seeing these job listings. I'm like, okay, Denver, Colorado, York, Pennsylvania. Oh, I know where York is. And then like a couple other like towns, and I'm like, Trucksville, Pennsylvania. I know where Trucksville, Pennsylvania is, because I've been coming up here my whole life. For Camp Orchard Hill. It said Cross Creek Community Church. So I applied, I submitted my resume, and at the time, Pastor Dave Martin, you know, called me, had a phone call with him, set up an interview with him, came up, got to meet him, got to meet his son, Dan, and we met up at Leggio's, you know, and had a really good time getting to know them. I think learning each other, and like me sharing my story and my heart with them, and vice versa. And so one thing would lead to another, and over the next few months, I'd have more conversations, more interviews, and eventually was offered the job of youth pastor at Cross Creek Community Church. And I just laughed, because, like, again, this is an area I've been coming to my whole life, and I've loved it up here, and God has used this area, Camp Orchard Hill specifically, in such a major way in my life. And I've been working there in the summers during college. I was a counselor there. Actually met my wife there.
That was going to be a question.
But it was, so we go back to, okay, remember lacrosse was an idol in my life. Well, another thing that became an idol in my life was relationships. I was constantly looking for a relationship, especially in my older high school years, right? I was always a big kid, though, didn't have a lot of self-confidence, but I would date, and no relationship I was ever in would ever last longer than like 2 weeks or 30 days. And then I get to college, you know, again, looking for a girl that loves the Lord, all of those things. And
They want ads for that too.
Huh?
They want ads for that too.
For sure. I mean, we have sayings, ring by spring, all these funny sayings at Christian college. I mean, people were calling it Philadelphia Bridal University, it's just a joke. But so I met a girl there and would date, and again, thought she was great. She was everything I was looking for, and broke up. I was just like, okay, Lord. All right, next one or two girls, we again, same thing. Couple weeks, 30 days, whatever. It wasn't, and it was not, there was nothing that like there was nothing bad going on in the relationship. It just wouldn't work out for one reason or the other, right? No harm between each other. And I started to like have conversations with other guys in my life there, and they're like, you're so focused, because I had a plan. I like having a plan. I'm gonna go to Bible college. I'm going to meet a girl my freshman year. We're going to date for 4 years, and then I'm going to get engaged before senior year and get married right after graduation.
We're going to have 2.5 kids.
Right, yeah, that was my plan, right? And God laughed at my plan, because every relationship that I would have in college was just an utter, I don't want to say utter failure. It just didn't work out, right? And all of those people are great people to this day, but it was just funny looking back now at why it wasn't working out. It was because I was making relationships an idol. So I just replaced lacrosse with
something else.
The pursuit of finding a girlfriend and a fiance and all those things. So I remember I had just gotten broken up with by a girl, and it was right before, and I had been debating whether I was going to work at camp again or not that summer. It would have been the summer before my senior year. And I decided, yes, I'm going to go back. And God, I am 100% focused on you. I don't want to meet anybody. I don't even want to talk to a girl. I'm there for the campers. I'm there to serve them, point them to you. God, I'm giving you this entire summer.
And he's like, I'll help you out. Good. You finally admitted it.
I come to the place where I surrendered all that, and we would get an email from the program director at camp, like welcoming us back, as working there, and he would share everybody's Facebooks or emails, like to get to know each other, to talk before the summer. And I saw this girl, her name was Melissa, and I'm like, oh, PBU, we went to the same school. I don't remember ever meeting her. Here I had overlapped her by 2 years. She had already graduated, but we were at school at the same time for 2 years, but never met. Paths never crossed at all. Knew plenty of the same people, and we ended up working at camp together. Ended up talking, and we were both actually going to the same wedding at the end of the summer. And she was in the wedding. I was just going, and so this is my gas is expensive. We could just ride down together.
How many years ago was that? Gas wasn't expensive. She bought that?
It was 2013. No, it was in 2012. So it wasn't anything like it was now, but it was.
Well, you really could have sold that today.
Yeah, it was expensive enough back then. And she would admit now that she thought I was a nice guy and it was cute, and so she went along with it and tolerated me. And we ended up starting to date. That like about halfway through the summer, and we've been together ever since. Got married.
Awesome.
Now 2 beautiful girls. So it's, God is funny how he's like, oh, you have a plan. Well, watch how that's not going to happen. And I have something better for you, but you need to realize it, and you need to get your priorities right. So
speaking of plans, so you go to Cross Creek as a youth pastor, met Pastor Dave Martin, but now you're in Pastor Dave Martin's shoes.
I am through a lot of changes of events recently.
So how do you I'm sure, I guess navigate's probably not the term, but you really thought that you really love youth, love families. You're not the youth anymore. Yeah. You are, for lack of better terms, the elder of that. And how do you put yourself in a position where you're not the elder? Like I said, I had a DUI accident before you were even born.
Right.
But how do you put yourself in that position where you're probably younger than more than 50% of the congregation?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, I haven't put myself in that position, but I honestly, I never thought I'd leave youth ministry. I would go to college with other guys, and this isn't a knock on them, but it's just, I just never agreed with this logic of, I'll be a youth pastor for a little bit until I get my own church, until I arrive or whatever it is. And I was just never that thought. I was like, I'm going to be youth ministry all the way through. Still love youth ministry, still love students, and we'll champion that because our teens, our students need men and women that love Jesus to be pointing them to him.
Yeah.
And
Definitely
and
need
teaching
direction.
them and be like, hey, and my whole thing going back to how I felt God was like, I wanted kids to hear my story, hear what I went through, and be like, hey, if I can offer you any advice to help you avoid having to go through some of these things, and help you steer you in the right direction first and foremost, like, let's do that. Then you have to go through and learn the hard way some of the lessons I had to learn.
That's kind of the reason to sit down and talk like this, to show that there's real people out there in pastoral positions, in just regular everyday life, that have had hiccups, that have hit rock bottom. Because a lot of kids don't listen to their parents. We don't listen to our parents. Nobody wants to listen to their parents. But if you can listen to somebody else that you saw,
that was the exact same thing your parents have been saying.
I come to realize it now. I mean, we have 4 boys. I'll talk to the kids, and it's like talking to a wall. And then I'll be like, I should have listened to my parents 20, 30, 40 years ago, because that's what they were telling me. And I look at our kids and go, don't listen. I don't listen to anything. And then they'll come home and tell me that somebody else told them. And I'm like, been saying that for like 6 months. You didn't hear any of it?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, and there's a funny commercial. I think it's like a FedEx commercial. And they're at a meeting table. And the guy goes, here's what we should do. And the guy's like, no. And he's like, I don't think so. And he's like, you know what we should do? And the guy's like, that's exactly what I said. And he goes, yeah, but you went like this. I went like this. It's like, that's all it is.
Yeah.
So I think it is a great part to sit down, have these conversations, have people either listen to them online, watch it online. I like the fact that we do a video, because this way they see it's real people.
Yeah.
And you can listen to it too. You don't have to watch it, but you can see that there's real people having a real conversation and talking about a real testimony and how there are hiccups. Some of them maybe hit home for somebody and maybe not for another, but that's kind of the idea of having different people, so that there are different testimonies out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So then where do you put yourself then with, you still champion youth ministry, but you are youth moving up to, leadership.
Yeah. And
do you think that's God's plan?
I'm still processing through it in a way. I know, again, I never thought I would leave youth ministry, but even a while ago, I had a conversation with another pastor of, stepping away from youth ministry and moving into like an associate role. And I had really kind of been, as the church was growing, I was really kind of functioning in that, working with the senior pastor at the time and going and working. I was more in an associate role. I was in the midst of handing off the youth ministry to our student director, who's there now. But I never thought I'd ever see myself leaving that. But then the Lord works on us over time, and He changes our hearts. Becoming a parent definitely changed, I think, my perspective on some things, and helped me mature and has helped growing my faith. But it's also still not discounting anything with youth ministry, but it's then, I think, wanting to have a greater impact on the family. Like, if there was another role I could be in for that, being able to use that in that way. So that's why I thought, I can not only minister to youth, but I could also be ministering to more adults in an associate pastor position, right? And then, of course, God has apparently had a different plan for that. It's not something I've been seeking out. Something I've been sharing with a lot of people lately is I want to be faithful and obedient. Those are 2 words through this entire kind of transition time in my life that I've felt God giving me, is be faithful and be obedient. Just do the next right thing. And so with that being said, just sharing my heart is, I don't want to run like Jonah did, but I also don't want to just assume, because I'm the only pastor at the church, that this is what God has for me. I really want to work that out and wrestle through that and pray through that. And I have been doing that. And God has really, I think, been teaching me a lot during this time, kind of even peeling back some layers of my heart and just showing me how He can use me in this role, if this is what He has for me. And if this is what He has for me, I want to step into it faithfully and do that. So I'm completely open to whatever God has for me. And just talking with people, I know a lot of the people at the church love what God's doing and how He's been using me. But I also, again, I try to always remember, and Jim Payne is the one that really made me examine this verse years ago when I was working for him at camp, is Galatians 1:10. For am I now trying to please men, or am I trying to please the Lord? I wouldn't be a servant of the Lord if I'm trying to please men. So if I'm going to do it, I need to be doing it for the Lord. I don't want to be doing it for man, and really wanting to seek out His will. And that being said, nowhere am I sensing a no from the Lord. God hasn't shut the door, slammed the door, like, nope, This isn't for you. I begged him. I've asked him, Lord, make this abundantly clear. I mean, send a whale to swallow me. I don't know, like if I'm not supposed to do this. But again, my wife my wife is very wise and she thinks about things through all different angles, and she had a good perspective, I thought, and I've shared this with people too. She goes, "What if God knew that you weren't pursuing this on your own, so that this is the way that it had to come about?
Yeah.
Like because you wouldn't decide to do that on your own. You were content, helping,
complacent, almost,
right? Comfortable,
yeah.
Like, and I don't want to try to brag here. Student ministry is hard, but when you know how to do something, when you know what you're doing, it gets easier, right? There's not so much of a challenge to it, and it's not that this is the next challenge I need to tackle. But it's easy to stay. I want to be comfortable.
Yeah,
I don't want to step out of the boat like Peter did. I don't want to. If I'm there, I'm like, no, I'm staying right in here. I don't think I'm going out there, Lord. Even though this is a pretty sure bet to stay in this boat. Peter, he's a little crazy. I don't know what he's thinking about doing right there, but I just, I think just trying to be faithful and just want to be obedient to whatever he has for me. I'm so glad. Again, I've been at Cross Creek for 12 years.
Yeah.
It'll be 13 years in June, and not a lot of people can say that, like pastor-wise, especially youth people who are youth pastors. A lot of them, it's between like 18 and 24 months, and it's like a new person.
Almost like a stepping stone.
Kind of. It is. And that's what those guys back in college were saying.
Yeah.
And it's like, I never envisioned it that way. I was just like, I'm here for these kids. Like a cycle of a student that I would have in student ministry, they're there. If they're there 6th through 12th grade, that's 6 years. 6 years I have with them to make an impact on their life. And my youth pastor made such a huge impact on my life. That's what I wanted to do for them, but for the Lord. Not like, again, I don't care if they're quoting me 30 years after they're out of youth group. It's no, like, I want them, when they think about me, as, hey, he pointed me to Jesus, and everything he said and did. He might not always have been perfect, but he always would point me back to the Lord.
No.
And there's not a doubt that he loved the Lord. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So besides lacrosse being an idol, relationships being an idol, did you ever find yourself a time just being like, God, I'm done with you, publicly, privately? You ever have that time where you had such challenges where your faith was challenged?
Yeah. I mean, ministry's hard, ministry's messy. And, I still remember there's people who are like, oh, you have, like, this is back when I was a youth pastor, but it's like, man, it must be like so great, working at a church, and like, must be like nothing, like, people complain about their jobs and different things.
The grass is always greener.
Yeah. There must be like nothing like wrong. Like, you must just love working, or you get the like, oh, you work 2 days a week, Wednesday and Sunday. It's like, oh my word, there's so much more. But with that being said, it's like, no, like there's still issues working at a church just like any other place.
It's a business in a way,
right? There's definitely a component of that. So, and we're yes, you're working for the Lord, but you're also working. There's a team of people there that you all are trying to function together to, fulfill the mission that the church the church has been given by the Lord. You're trying to pursue that. So, I think there's times where there's moments of discouragement. I don't really go into anything specific. I can't really think of anything specific right at this moment, but it's like, or there's just hard interactions with people.
Managing people is one of the hardest parts of a job.
Pastor Dave, I remember, and I hope he's okay with me quoting him on this. I remember it was like my first week or month at the church. I remember he goes, Brian, like, the best part about this job is seeing God work in the lives of people and transform them. The hardest part about this job are the people, because they don't, because it can be so gut wrenching and heartbreaking when you're trying to help someone and they're rejecting your help, or you try to counsel someone and they're like, no, like, I'm not going to listen to you, or I don't agree with that. Or they get upset with you, the church, or anything, for whatever reason, right? Fill in whatever blank you want. And it's just like, and you just care about them and you love them and you want what's best for them. You want what God has for them. And it's just hard, people, like, relationships. It wouldn't be, what's the term? It's like anything worth, like, anything that's easy isn't worth
isn't worth doing.
Isn't worth it. Like, and it's just like, but those relationships, cultivating those, and again, pointing others to Jesus. Ministry, again, it's messy, and I've been, as a pastor, often referred to as a shepherd, right? I've heard the term, so over the years, sheep bite. They can, they can bite. But shepherds can also be cruel. Like it's the other
truth
thing.
and love. Gail always tells
Exactly.
me. She goes, I have too much truth, and I don't deliver a lot of love with it. And that's hard because I look at stuff, and sometimes it's so black and white for me, and I look at you and kind of where my mess ups were, and I wish somebody looked at me back in the day because we all receive things different, and I wish somebody looked at me back in the day and went, idiot. Stop. Because that would work for me. Right. But now you look at somebody and go, you're an idiot. Why are you doing that? Right. And then you break down into tears and everything, and you're like, but I was just telling you. Like, don't do that.
Right.
But don't. Why'd you say it? Like, it's like, okay. So you got to be careful with, it's again, managing in any form of a group.
Oh, yeah.
Church related or not, you need to be able to have truth and love.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to present it. Now, how it's received is a totally different story.
Well,
because just like you said, those people, but you hope that when you planted the seed, that they take that, and at least, even if they left on bad terms out of the office, or maybe wherever. Somebody didn't like your sermon for today and was like, hey, I didn't care for that, what he said, and then you go home and really didn't care for it, most of the times because you're maybe convicted about it.
Correct.
Or if you didn't care about it, maybe it just didn't hit for you today.
Right.
There's been times where I've sat, through your sermons before, and not that they were bad, but just like, it wasn't meant for me.
Right.
I understood it. Something I've heard before. It took me to maybe another, maybe I didn't think about that way or something, and it was good, but it wasn't something that grabbed me that was like, I broke down into tears, or I felt the conviction, or it was that. But then there are ones that are like, you can feel your heartstrings being pulled, and the Lord going, talking to you today, and it's like, all right, I know.
Right between
I still don't want to listen, but I know you're talking to me. All right, why'd you have to send him to do it? I don't want to listen to this. Came to church. Why do I have to listen to this?
And oftentimes, I think there's something to be said of the pastor when they're sharing the message. It's not just for the people listening. It's also for them, like, and how God, because again, God's the one that brings the message together. It's not necessarily. There's times where I'm doing a message and I'm just like, man, I don't really want to talk about this, but this is what God has laid on my heart to share, and because maybe I need to hear it and be reminded of it. We have good gospel amnesia, right? we know what the Bible says, but then it's like, we maybe hear something on a Sunday and we're convicted about it, and we're like, we're on fire about it, but then by Wednesday we're looking, it's like, I kind of don't really want to do that anymore. I want to just do whatever I want.
No, it's so true. That's the reason that I feel that I put this together to talk to people, because most of it's on me too, because I need to be reminded. I talk about things and I don't walk the walk all the time, or I very easily forget my own problems, and sitting down and actually keeping it to the frontal lobe is really in your face all the time. And I think one of the things that I always think about is people say about having a habit. And usually a habit is formed within 30 days, give or take. But it's so true. And that can be negative or positive. Somebody that starts smoking. No one's, when I was in high school, I remember I had a cigarette. It was like one of the most awful tasting things I ever had. But I did it again. And I did it again. And I never really got, I didn't smoke for 30, 40 years or something like that. But I did it again. And it was awful the second time. And I thought, it's stupid. But for people that do it over time, it just becomes a habit.
Right.
And that can be anything, whether it's drug related. I've never done big narcotics or anything like that, so I can't say that. But I can look at people that I do know and stories and facts that I've read. Somebody that does something once, they're not necessarily hooked. Now, do they want to go and do it again, maybe to try it again? But a lot of times it's just because you've put yourself into a situation that's a habit.
Right.
Same thing with surrounding yourself with people. If you surround yourself with a bad crowd and you keep going down that road and you're there long enough, you're going to assume that
bad company corrupts good character.
And so it
Thank the Lord, the Bible tells us that.
It is it's amazing. I remember when I first was saved and listening to Family Life, and one of their things was a 30-day challenge to listen to nothing but Christian music. And I was like, all right, whatever. I found myself never wanting to listen to another thing again. And it's like never putting that together, that not that they were using it as like a subliminal, here's an in. Right. But it's so true, because once you change your mindset and you're doing it, it becomes a habit. So we need to fill ourselves with more good habits.
Right.
And then the bad habits kind of go away. Getting in the Word every day is great because it keeps it on that frontal lobe, remembers, it puts it always there. So all the bad stuff is out. If you believe in good, you have to believe in evil.
Right.
And vice versa. So, from a Christian standpoint, obviously we believe in the good, but
Yeah.
we would be stupid
Naive,
to think
yeah.
that
There's
there is no evil. Because if everything was good, then what else is there to worry about? We'd be back in Utopia of the Garden of Eden before, the serpent, because everything would be good.
Yeah.
So there is evil. But one of the things that I think that I heard somebody say it the other day was disbelief is powerful. Because in believing's powerful, right?
Yeah.
Prayer is powerful.
Oh, yeah.
But not believing is just as powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Pushing you the negative way.
Right.
So if we don't believe, or if we believe, but we're like, oh, well, God can't do that.
Yeah.
You've put yourself in a point because he's going to go, okay, don't want me to?
Yeah.
He wants, just like you, gave up.
Yeah.
Lord, I don't want anything to do with relationships now. And then what does he put in front of you? Here's the relationship.
Yeah, he wants, your surrender and obedience.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Based on church.
Okay.
Have you heard about the influx of progressive Christianity?
I've heard like different. I think that's a really broad definition, but I've definitely heard
where people are trying to say that we're Christian, but we're putting this in here.
Yeah.
So I know our message as the church is the method can change, but the message never will.
Correct. Yeah.
Wouldn't you think that cancels out progressive Christianity?
You would think. Oh, you're saying like to not.
Because if the method changes, that's fine. Yeah, of course. There's different things out in the world. I mean, we go back 2,000 years. Yeah. There weren't iPhones. There weren't this. I remember his name was Mike Brown. He came to church and did a preaching. And at the time, I was adverse to Facebook because I had thought Facebook was evil, like all the stuff.
The devil's playground.
And exactly, that's exactly what I thought. When it first came out, Farmville and what you're eating tonight.
Farmville. Oh, you just reminded me about my mother-in-law. She had a great Farmville. Farm.
Oh, it was a great farm.
Oh, yeah.
But back in the day when it was just Farmville and, what you were eating tonight, it was cool. It's like, oh, where'd you get the meatloaf recipe? Oh, how many hens do you have in the pen? Yeah. All that was great. But now it's nothing but a political warfare of wanting to kill people.
You're going to argue with someone.
No matter what you say.
Yeah.
But it was funny because Mike at the time got up and he said, he agreed with what I was thinking. But then he said, you take the evil and you make it for good. Mm-hmm. So all he did was post his sermons, his Bible verses, and everything. And I was like, wow. And I went hog wild on Facebook. I was like every day, 2-3 times I'm posting stuff. Here's a thought, and then it kind of died off. I was a new, Christian on fire.
Yeah.
New Christian on fire. And I was like bombarding it. And I'm like, this is great. And that stuff, if you take it and you twist it, it doesn't look all that well. But I think, again, the method changes because Facebook wasn't around.
Right.
But if you can get into people and using what we're using here, getting into people, but the message, the true word of God needs to stay.
Yeah, God's word hasn't changed.
Right. So going in there and doing a reinterpretation, I was listening to radio this morning and they talked about Book of Revelation, and the one host on the radio said, I had this vision of Book of Revelation that this is what it was. Oh. And this is what I thought it was going to be. And this is what I've been telling everybody. He goes, and then my brother said to me, that's not what it means at all. And he goes, after doing research, he goes, come to find out that my theory that I had believed and heard was only 150 years old.
There you go. Yeah.
His theory was still from 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And he had presented it and showed it to me. He's like, wow, I can't believe that I had accepted something that wasn't per se true.
Right.
It was something that somebody knew 150 years ago, had imparted into a system, and then everybody just kind of, ran with it, and it was, again, changed the message.
Oh, and that's where it's just so funny because you think about it, and a lot of the progressive Christianity we're looking at, a lot of the things that I've been on the receiving end of or have heard are people trying to say, okay, does the Bible really teach against homosexuality? Does the Bible really teach against this? Doesn't that sound like something that we can go all the way back to the book of Genesis where Satan, in the form of the serpent, is looking at you and be like, did God really say?
Yeah.
It's just like,
it's right here.
Yeah. Stop trying to twist it.
It's like,
but that doesn't really mean this. It's just like, and thankfully there are men and women out there that are much smarter than me that dive deep into these things. You ever heard of Sean McDowell? Mm-hmm. He is a great apologist. He's a professor. His father, Josh McDowell, wrote more. I think it was More Than a Carpenter, a book that's been used to to
I think I have that one.
Yeah, you probably. I think every man at some point has had it. If you're a follower of Jesus, because it's impacted that many people, and like he can break it down to the exact language where they're trying to like say, well, it's really saying this. And he goes, actually, no, because if you know anything about that language, there's no specific. They're trying to like. There's that verse where it says, well, a man to lie down with another man. And they're like, well, that's kind of saying it's like for an adult male
and
a
child.
Young boy,
yeah.
And it's like, actually, no, you look into the original language, it does not specify age.
Yeah.
It's male and male.
Yeah.
No. So therefore, no. But we try. I think we try. There are churches out there that are trying to just go with the flow of culture. And again, like you said, there are certain things that we can. I don't know if the word leverage is the right word, or I've heard other pastors say we can outright reject something, or we can redeem it. Is there a way to redeem Facebook? Is there a way to redeem Instagram?
Mm.
Is there a way to redeem TikTok? And I think like when you're using it for godly purposes of sharing His word, of being a witness for Him, of promoting, like I think you can do that, with social media. Again, as hard as it is, because again, you can't go on Facebook without seeing an argument and just and in our flesh, we just want to like jump into it, right? That's why you're like, here's why you're wrong, or we just want to sit there and like, go to a community page on Facebook, and that's where everybody
train wreck happens.
Everybody's arguing about something, or coming up with theories of we're getting another Dollar General.
I hold myself back from commenting on a lot of them because I'm like, I don't want to get into it. And then there's times where I'm like, or I feel like I'm great with sarcasm, as far as my wife tells me. I'm not sure. But there's times where I look at it and I'm like, ooh, have I got a good one? And then I'm like, no, that's not right. I don't need to say that, because I think you preached on it. Is it think? Break down the acronym.
What I'm about to say: true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Maybe some parts of it.
Does it
have to be all of it?
We can justify it. Yeah.
Does it have to be the whole word? Because I nailed it on 3 of them.
Yeah.
But
and that's why I think pastors and churches in general, they have to guard against against that progressivism, because again, it's not saying, okay, we have to go back and we can only sing hymns, or we can only do this, or we can or use this translation, whatever. You have to, again, I think you have to be discerning. You have to another person I've heard said is this: you need to be able to learn to eat the whole fish and spit out the bones. To be able to separate the bad from the good. Is there good here that can be, and then ultimately pray through it and is this something for our church to do? But as far as compromising the word of God, I mean, it says what it says. It used to be, and again, a lot of people, they reject this now, but it used to be like, God said it, that settles it. And I believe it. And again, for me, like, that still holds true. Like, okay, if I have a New England Patriots hat on, right? If there was a verse in the Bible that said, "Thou shalt not root for the New England Patriots," well, then I'm not. I guess I can't be a Patriots fan. Because I want to follow God's word. I want to be obedient to it. I want to not be doing something that is going to be dishonoring Him, because I follow Him, and that's not out of a, well, if I do this, He's going to reject me forever, and I'm not ever going to be accepted or anything. Like, it's just, no, I want to be obedient to Him. I want to follow Him.
Well, and that's again, coming back to our testimonies. You can't. I said it in another episode that I did, is that a pastor once told me, anybody can argue the Bible with you, progressive, whatever it is, whatever they want to say. This is what it says, this is what it didn't say. But what they can't argue is your testimony.
Correct.
So the stories that you and I sit here and talk about, I can't change that, because you lived it.
Right.
And I can't say that it's wrong, because you know all the facts. It's your life. Same here. So you can't dispute that. And then how we can enter God into that story, you can't change that either. Because I wouldn't be me and you wouldn't be you. Even the person you're talking to wouldn't be them without God.
Exactly.
So until that comes together, but that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So you can argue what you can say somebody wrote 2,000 years ago all you want. But what somebody wrote 2,000 years ago has built what has happened in my life and in your life. So you can't change that. And you need to, like I said, I mentioned bad stuff that happened to me. But if that bad stuff didn't happen, I don't think I'd be here. Or some of the bad stuff was kept away from me so that I am still here. And there's got to be a reason to it. I spent some time in prison, and I remember it was after I was saved, unfortunately, because I had caused some problems before that. But went in and found out that they had a Bible study on Tuesday nights. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. It's going to be great. There's guys in here, you know. So we went in. There's like 20 guys going in. I'm like, oh, cool. You know, I'll get to talk to somebody, you know, and see. Nobody in there wanted to know anything about God. They just wanted out of the cell for the day. And I'm like, well, this stinks. This is stupid, you know, like, but I was there. So then I just got into it with the pastor that was there having the ministry. And then end up having not an argument, but a back and forth with him, because at the time I had gotten my hands on a radio while I was in prison, and listening to Focus on the Family and listening to Alistair Begg and Ravi Zachariah.
Yeah.
I used to love Sunday nights because I would listen to that. Then I would listen to worship music, and I'm like, this is great. This is what I need. I read through the Bible twice while I was in prison,
Wow.
trying to go through everything. And then I'd have conversations with the pastor, and he'd be like, that's not what it says. What? It says it right here. You know, and I'd be like, you know what you should do? You should get these guys all a radio, because I'm telling you what I'm listening to. And he's like, Satan had pipes in his vocal cords, and this guy was like a Baptist preacher that came in, and he's like, so any music is from Satan. And I'm like, so then I had to question myself, and I'm going back listening to my Walkman going, am I listening to Satan? Is this right? Is this guy right? And I'm like, no, because I'm not convicted at all.
Right.
You know, and I'm telling other people about it, and there's guys that other guys that have Walkman, and they're listening to it. I'm like, okay, this is. But again, whether it's progressive or not, but this guy was totally. He was the type that you don't have a deck of cards in your house.
Right.
You don't stray from this clothing wise. You don't have anything with writing on it. You know, it's like primary colors. It's that. And I'm like, is that really? And I'm thinking, is that the way?
Right.
You know, and then you start to question those things. So I can see very easily. You know, and there was another one on the radio this morning where the woman that spoke. I can't remember what she was on, Focus on the Family or something, but her talk this morning was all about going to church, and the pastor there was an agnostic, and he was preaching progressive Christianity and tried changing the view of the herd at church.
Yeah.
And she had to step away and go, she started to question what she knew, and she grew up faithfully. And it was like, wow, you know, like to guard yourself and wonder and listen when you go to church. And if you feel that something's wrong,
right,
it probably is, you know, or talk to an elder, or go right to the source, right to the pastor, you know, and have these questions, and have the dialogue.
Yeah, and I would always, again, even just being in that position myself, I'd always rather have someone come to me and have that conversation than to leave angry and to not know.
Like, or walk out the door and spread something negative.
Yeah, or says like, let's talk about it. You know, like because I even a few weeks ago there was someone who was like, now you said this, and it was a simple, hey, you misheard me. Like, I didn't say that. Like, this is what I said. Oh, okay. And they were doing a lot better, you know, after they heard me explain it. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad like you came up to me though, because I would hate for you to leave thinking that and like thinking I said that, because it was something that would have been completely heretical. You know, that I wouldn't have agreed with it, and they're saying I said it. So
replay the tape.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the footage. Those commercials. Yeah, there's so. Again, I think we have to understand. Yes, we're called to be in the world, but not of the world.
Mm.
But I don't think God's intention for us was to be like separatist. If you think about it, like you look at the Amish. I love their cooking. Don't think I could live the way they live, but like they're there. But like, are they? And that's like a religious, right? A religious sect. How are they reaching anyone, right? Like, are they? I'd have to look into it. And I'm not. This is not like Brian versus Amish.
Yeah, no. Listen, I totally agree. Gail lived down in that area, and I always look at Amish and think that they're fantastic. And she knows. Well, she's seen some other people that are a little off in their Amish ways,
right?
But I like the lifestyle.
Yeah,
I like the simplicity.
It's simple. Yeah,
I like the whole fact of just the way I love farm life. So for me, when I look at it, it's got two of my favorite things: farm life and God.
Yeah.
If I can have my family doing that, but like you said, they're kind of closed off. They're not really inviting a lot of people in. There's no, sign-ups to be Amish.
Right.
It's kind of, you're born into it, and that's about it.
And that's like, when I see someone like that, like, and I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush here, but like hearing the person that you were just talking about, like, I imagine they might be someone who's like on a street corner with a bullhorn too, with a sign saying turn or burn or something like that. And again, I don't know how effective that is in our world today, rather than just engaging someone in a conversation and building a relationship with that person and ultimately having the opportunity to have an impact on them, versus like hearing someone yell at you, you know. And again, especially with just working with students, I mean, that I would say for the majority of students, that's not going to work today. Yeah. Like you're not gonna have any young people there. Like, you know, and ultimately what will happen is that your church will die. And again, I'm not saying you need to use gimmicks or use this or use that. Like you need to just be faithful and preach the word of God, but also be examining yourself of how we're also treating others, because very quickly we can become pharisaical, you know, and really like, you know, we're no better than the religious leaders of that day, and we get puffed up. So
that's kind of with what you're saying about the kids. I would say it is the whole love and truth, you know, part of it. And I used to tell the boys, and even when I would manage people, I would say, listen, if I'm yelling at you, don't pay attention to me, because if I've got myself so agitated that I'm yelling at you, what's probably coming out of my mouth is probably true, but not being delivered the right way. Yeah. So don't listen to me. But if I'm talking to you and we're having a one-on-one, we're having a conversation, there's depth here, pay attention. Yeah. I tell that to the kids when I would manager places. I would always have that conversation and just be like, listen, just walk away from me or sit there and listen and take it if I'm yelling, but realize that it wasn't meant for you that way or however, just let it go. But if we're talking and there's heartfelt, if there's that love with the truth, then listen. Put it in there. Pay attention. You know, take it. You mentioned a guy with the turn and burn sign. Yeah. You ever see the guy that stood out in front of the church on Sundays that had a sign?
I haven't gotten to see him, but I've heard that
I saw him on a street corner once, and I stopped to talk to him.
Yeah.
And that man has been involved in some serious spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. He has told me some stories, and I mean stories that, again, testimony that only he can tell you about. Yeah. And it's one of those, if you believe in good, you have to believe in evil. And some of the things that he told me and that he's seen was evil that nobody should be involved with. There's a book called, what's it called? Uncover the Veil? The Veil. Did you ever hear of that?
I have heard of it.
And a gentleman that sees demons, and he's been in church and he's seen them, and he's seen people that are weak, and he's actually literally seen the demons, like pick them apart and try to get into them. That's spiritual warfare. It's out there. It's real. Oh yeah. You know, I don't remember who was at church that talked about it. I think it might have been Dave Early had talked, and he said that when they had went somewhere to talk to somebody that was in a hospital, that the voice changed in the woman and said, get that knife away from me. Yeah. And they're like, who's got knives? And all the knives, there's 7 of them in here. And they realized on the way home, they all had a Bible. There were 7 people in that room that had a Bible. Wow. And what it says that, you know, the Lord, the armor of the Lord, Spirit, right? And it was, so there was a demon. It's real. Yeah. So the turn and burn, but again, it's truth and love. Right. The whole turn and burn is like, all right, crazy man, because somebody who's not anywhere near spiritually mature or ever seen that, that to them, that's like, okay, there's demons floating around, whatever. But people that have literally been involved in it and know it and see it, it's real, you know. And for that guy, it's real. You know, he doesn't deliver it well, and I even kind of said that to him, like, and he feels that that's his calling and that's what he should do. On the back of his sign, he's got tons of Bible verses that kind of follow what he's telling people. And I'm like, dude, I totally agree with you, but more flies with honey type thing. You know, like you got to explain to people, because there's people that honk, you know, wave to him, give him a thumbs up. Then there's other people that call him crazy man, scream at him, throw things at him. You know, the cops try to remove him. You know, there's all kinds of situations.
I'm sure.
So, it's a weird situation.
Yeah, it's walking in a way that we are. Again, I look at Jesus. Jesus is full of truth and full of grace. You know, I think that's John 1:14. I think.
Don't ask me. I'm terrible with that.
I think that's what. But like, and again, we're not Jesus, so we're not God's son. We're not perfect. We're not any of those things. But like, I always try to be like, okay, I need to be full of truth, but also full of grace. Because again, like you said, I could be saying to you something that is 100% absolute fact true, but if I'm not delivering it correctly, you're not going to hear me. Yeah. You're not going to listen, or whoever I'm talking to isn't going to listen.
In one, out the other.
Exactly. So and I think that's why we need to be mindful in how we approach things and really thoughtful about those things. It doesn't mean we're hiding. It doesn't mean we won't engage with anybody. But I think, you know, talking about even again, another pastor I was listening to said, hey, meek doesn't mean weak. You know, just because you're saved doesn't mean you have to be soft. Yeah. You know, like all this, but like you also don't need to be a jerk either. Yeah. You know, like a fine line. So and to be that way, you know, what is it? Wise as serpents, but as gentle as doves. You know, God even tells us that.
Well, it doesn't. The devil doesn't come at you with the horns and the pitchfork and all red. No, he comes in with like the sweet offering or whatever it is that you're looking for at the time. Yep. You know, that's it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Brian, this has been awesome. This is great.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I always ask somebody at the end when we talk, and I'm sure we can probably still sit here and talk, but a wise man told me once I shouldn't keep a podcast any more than 30 minutes. I don't think he listens to a lot.
Right.
He's going to be on one of these days.
Does he know Joe Rogan?
I should be wise. When he comes on, I told Gail, I said, when he comes on, I said, you got to give me like a, when 30 minutes is there, because, but he also listens at podcasts at like 2.5. I never even knew you could listen that. Did you know that?
You can. I don't know how much I absorb.
Yeah.
I think I can't really get past like the 1.2, 1.5. I can't.
It was crazy. But he's got to get stuff done. So he's like, you really shouldn't do more than a half hour. I'm like, I can't imagine summing stuff up in a half hour, especially two guys sitting around talking. That's something that's near and dear to our hearts and that we feel that we're sharing with somebody. So that being said, is there anything that you would like to leave? Because I titled this podcast, Leave a Message. Anything that you'd like to leave personally for somebody that when they listen to this, or maybe someplace to search, like we mentioned a lot of pastors' names. Is there a verse? Is there something that sticks out that you'd like to just say, hey, if you got anything out of this, this is it?
Yeah. I mean, I know our church is always, our mission we feel like is to love God and love people. We do that. We impact our world by multiplying Christ followers who will love God and love people, and there's no greater thing that you can ever do than put your faith and trust in Jesus. He will change your life. It doesn't mean it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows, but he will take you places you never thought you'd go, and you'll be doing things you never thought you'd be doing, but in a good way, for him. And that's, if you're looking for purpose, you got to go to the one who gave you your purpose, who created you. Awesome. So that's all I have.
And we don't need any more than that. That is it. Yeah. On top of that, I always end with something to give away to people that helps in a walk with something that maybe helps with your walk in faith or in the Lord. So I picked these up online. Okay. These are cards. There's 52 of them, so there's enough for a week, one a week for the year. They're called Christian mindset cards. There's 52 habits for growing a life. Each one gives you maybe a verse or something to think about. Put it in a little stand. Put it where you get ready in the morning, in the bathroom, if you need to look at it. So anybody who watches this or listens to this, they can comment, like it, and we'll do a little randomizer and send these out to you, mail it out to you, so you have something that helped you along with also listening to what we talked about today.
I like that. So, faith isn't always a feeling.
It's true.
There's got to be days in our walks where we wake up and
you're not feeling it.
You're not feeling it. But guess what? God doesn't move. God doesn't change.
That's right.
He's always there. He's waiting for you. And again, those are the days where you need to get close with him the most. Yeah, I think.
I got a sign here behind me that my one son did. It says, "Knock and the door shall be open." He's just waiting. Yeah. You just got to knock, man. The door's there. Yeah. He's just waiting for you to come in.
Absolutely.
That's it. Well, Brian, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having you. Yeah. And hopefully we'll catch up again.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Everybody. Love y'all.
Bye.